Hey there, welcome to the BCBA exam prep on prompting and stimulus control. Today, we're diving into key prompting strategies that are critical for your BCBA exams. We're going to break down the most important terms, show you how to apply prompting strategies in behavior analysis, and explore how stimulus control transfer can lead to greater independence for the learner. By the end of this session, you'll be ready to take your study to the next level and ace these topics on your exam. Let's jump in. Let's dive into the concept of prompting. In simple terms, a prompt is an antecedent stimulus that triggers or elicits a correct response from the learner. Prompting is widely used in applied behavior analysis, ABA, to guide learners toward the appropriate behavior. This is done by introducing an external stimulus that directs the learner's attention to the correct behavior. Prompting serves several purposes. It is essential for teaching these skills, it helps reduce errors, and it ensures accurate responding from the learner. By using prompts, we can encourage desired behaviors while also fading assistance to allow the learner to become independent over time. The process, as shown here, involves presenting the antecedent, providing the prompt, and seeing the correct response. Now that we understand what a prompt is, let's explore the different types of prompts you will encounter in ABA. There are three core categories. Response prompts. These act directly on the learner's response to help them perform the desired behavior. Stimulus prompts. These modify the environment or stimuli in the learner's surroundings to cue the correct behavior. Prompt fading. This refers to the technique of gradually reducing the level of assistance, allowing the learner to perform independently over time. Each of these types serves a specific purpose in guiding the learner, depending on their needs and the complexity of the skill being taught. Let's look closely at response prompts, which directly affect the learner's behavior. These prompts can elicit specific responses by providing clear instructions or cues. Response prompts are crucial when the learner is expected to perform an action, and they guide the learner toward that action. There are three common forms of response prompts. Verbal prompts. Instructions given through speech, such as telling a learner, say hello when greeted. Modeling prompts, demonstrating the behavior for the learner to imitate, like showing them how to wave. Physical prompts, physically guiding the learner's movements to perform the task correctly, like helping them hold a pen. Each of these is highly effective depending on the learner's needs, whether they need clear instructions, an example to follow, or physical guidance. Starting with verbal prompts, this is where the teacher or therapist gives clear verbal instructions to the learner. A simple example could be saying, say hello when greeted. These prompts are great for learners who have language skills, but need some extra guidance. By giving a verbal cue, you're helping them know exactly what to say and when to say it. Verbal prompts direct the learner's attention to the right thing at the right time. Next up, we have modeling prompts. This is where you demonstrate the behavior you want the learner to do. For example, you could show the learner how to wave by actually waving yourself. The idea is that by seeing the behavior, the learner can imitate it. Modeling works well when the learner can immediately practice the behavior they just saw, so they can start using it right away. Now, we get to physical prompts, which involve giving the learner hands-on guidance. For example, if you're teaching them how to hold a pen, you might gently guide their hand to the right position. Physical prompts are super helpful for learners who need direct assistance to perform a task. As they become more skilled, you can reduce the level of physical support until they can do it on their own. Next, let's explore stimulus prompts, which work by modifying the antecedent stimuli in the learner's environment. Unlike response prompts, which directly affect the learner's behavior, stimulus prompts change the environment or visual cues to help the learner respond correctly. For example, gestural prompts involve using hand or body movements to cue behavior. Position prompts involve placing stimuli in a specific location to prompt the learner's response. Redundancy prompts use multiple cues for the same stimulus to enhance clarity. These types of prompts are essential for guiding the learner's attention and helping them respond to the correct stimuli in their environment. Gestural prompts are a simple but effective way to cue behavior. These involve using hand or body movements to guide the learner. For example, you might point to an object or location, encouraging the learner to focus on it. This method is especially useful for nonverbal learners or when visual cues are more helpful than verbal instructions. By using gestures, You reduce the reliance on words and help learners focus on the correct stimulus. With position prompts, we use the location of a stimulus to help guide the learner's response. For instance, in a multiple-choice task, you can position the correct answer closer to the learner. This increases the chances that they'll select the right option. Position prompts are also useful in tasks like sorting or labeling, where guiding the learner's attention to the correct answer is key to success. Redundancy prompts add extra or repeated stimuli to ensure that the learner understands what's being asked. By offering multiple cues for the same stimulus, you reinforce the expected response. For example, if you want a learner to say hello, you might say hello 3 times. Repeating the cue helps make sure the learner knows exactly what's expected of them. Let's talk about prompt fading, which is the process of gradually reducing the assistance you provide to the learner. You start with the most intrusive prompts, like physical guidance, and work your way down to less intrusive prompts like verbal cues as the learner becomes more capable. The goal is to help the learner become more independent, but it's important to ensure the fading happens at the right pace to maintain success. With most to least prompting, you begin with the most intrusive prompt, like physical guidance, and gradually reduce assistance as the learner improves. For example, you might begin by physically guiding the learner, then move to modeling, and eventually just use verbal cues. This approach works best for learners who need significant support at the beginning, but will eventually become independent with consistent practice. On the other hand, least to most prompting starts with the least intrusive prompt, like a verbal cue, and only increases assistance if needed. So, you start with the least amount of support, and then only add more help if the learner struggles. This method works best when you think the learner might be able to perform the task with minimal guidance, but you're ready to step in if they need extra help. Now let's talk about time delay, which is a technique used to fade prompts over time. With time delay, you introduce a delay between the prompt and the learner's response. The idea is to give the learner some time to respond independently before you give the prompt. As the learner gets better, you increase the delay so that they respond on their own without needing the prompt. Graduated guidance is a technique used to reduce physical prompts gradually. It's about providing just enough assistance to help the learner complete the task. For example, in hand-over-hand fading, you start with full physical support and gradually reduce it, allowing the learner to perform more independently. Stimulus control transfer is the process of transferring control from the prompt to the natural stimulus. For example, you might fade prompts so that the environment itself cues the response. The ultimate goal is to develop independent behavior, where the learner can respond appropriately to the natural cues in their environment. Prompting plays an essential role in ABA because it helps learners acquire new behaviors. It provides structured support, reducing errors and encouraging independence over time. As we gradually fade prompts, learners build the ability to perform the behavior on their own, transferring the control to natural stimuli in their environment. When using prompts, it's important to avoid a few common mistakes. Over-reliance on prompts. Learners can become dependent on prompts and not respond independently. Inconsistent fading. If you change the level of assistance inconsistently, it can confuse the learner and slow progress. Using prompts too soon. Providing assistance before the learner has had a chance to respond can interfere with natural learning. To wrap things up, let's go over the key takeaways on prompting. These are the most important concepts you need to keep in mind as you move forward. Choose the right prompt. It's crucial to select the appropriate prompt based on the learner's needs. For example, some learners may respond best to verbal prompts, while others may need physical prompts or modeling. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. Understanding the learner's strengths and challenges will help you decide the right type of prompt to use. Use fading techniques. As the learner improves, it's important to gradually reduce the level of assistance provided. This is where fading techniques come into play. You can use techniques like most to least and least to most prompting to help the learner become more independent. The idea is to gradually reduce your involvement, allowing the learner to take more control over their responses. Be consistent and data-driven. Consistency is key in prompting. As you use prompts, make sure you monitor progress regularly. Use data to track whether the learner is moving toward independence and adjust your approach as needed. Being data-driven will allow you to make informed decisions about when to fade prompts or change strategies. On the BCBA exam, expect scenario-based questions on prompting. You'll need to identify the type of prompt used, evaluate the scenario, and select the appropriate strategy. Pay attention to key phrases in the scenarios that will point you toward the correct type of prompt. Watch out for these common traps: confusing response versus stimulus prompts. Be careful not to mix up these two types. Not understanding fading techniques. Be sure you know the difference between most to least and least to most. Overcomplicating scenarios. Keep it simple and focus on the most straightforward answer. To prepare for the BCBA exam, start by memorizing core prompting terms. Understand the differences between response prompts and stimulus prompts. Practice fading strategies and review scenarios to identify the correct prompts for each situation. Here are the final key takeaways. Understand prompt types, response and stimulus prompts. Master fading techniques, most to least to most, time delay, and graduated guidance. Practice stimulus control transfer for independent behavior. That wraps up our session on prompting and stimulus control. Now, it's time to put your knowledge into action. Try our free full-length BCBA mock exam to solidify your understanding and boost your confidence. You're on your way to becoming a certified BCBA.